Hey, Spence.
Yeah, Shane?
Have you seen Bram Stoker's Dracula?
No, I haven't.
Well... Now you have.
And this episode's super special because it's not just you and me.
No, on this very spooky special episode, we have a special guest.
Ethan is here with us.
Hi.
Ethan and I go way back, like middle school. We've known each other, became really good friends in high school. He's a super talented writer. Him and Shane for a long time now have been trying to get me to watch this movie.
Yep.
Now we
Too
are
long.
here. Yeah, it's been I've aged considerably. I look like him at the beginning, when he's like, that's how I look now.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one that I watched for the first time like a couple of years ago and immediately fell like head over heels in love with. So yeah, like it is not like something I've been like passionately in love with for a very long time, but it is something that I like immediately. I saw it and I was like, okay, this is just the coolest shit I've ever seen. So Ethan, what's your history with it?
I have been passionate for quite a long time. I mean, I grew up watching the classic Universal monster movies, and Dracula was always my favorite. And so I love the Bela Lugosi version. And you grow up and you find out there are other versions of Dracula. So I watched the Christopher Lee version, and I went back and watched Nosferatu, and then I found out that Francis Ford Coppola, the director of The Godfather,
Right,
directs a Dracula movie.
Yeah.
I think I was 10 years old, and I found it at a library.
You saw this when you were 10?
Let me finish the story real quick.
God.
I went to the library with my mom, and I took it. I put it on the top of my pile, and I went up to check it out. My mom looked down and she said, "What's that?" And I remember saying, "Oh, it's a Dracula movie." She said, "You're not seeing that." Because she had previously seen it in theaters, and she knew how messed up it was a little bit.
Yeah.
And she said, "No, you're not seeing that."
How deeply sexual and how deeply freaky and spooky and crazy this movie is.
The vampire turns into mice in this. You're not watching it.
Is that, in your opinion, is that the craziest part?
No.
Yeah, like
no.
no.
It's just one of those moments where I was like, what the fuck? Anyway, continue your story.
No, I think it wasn't until I was maybe 16 when I finally got the chance to watch it. And yeah, I've been in love ever since. It's truly also probably the movie that like solidified my opinion that Gary Oldman is the best actor of all time, in my opinion. I mean, I had seen him in other stuff. I had seen him in The Dark Knight, Harry Potter. But I remember watching this and being like, oh, I love this guy. I want to see everything else he's ever done. And
Fair.
I have, pretty much.
Fair.
Gary Oldman's good.
He's definitely in the conversation for sure. 100%. All right, Spencer, this is your first time viewing it.
All right, yeah.
What are your thoughts? How do you feel?
Sorry, let me tell my story of how I got here. I was born on a cold, stormy... This is a weird movie to have two of your closest friends continually try to get you to watch for an extended period of time because it is not exactly well regarded. I think it's a very divisive movie at the very least. Like, most people who talk about it are like, that movie's weird, it's not very good, Keanu's bad in it.
Yeah, I think that's where so much of the controversy, or I think that is where a lot of it kind of starts and ends, is like, man, Keanu sucks. It's like, yeah, but everything else is so wild and awesome.
Well, okay, that's where I'm at. Like, y'all were sitting on the couch with me just looking at me as I'm like throwing my hands in the air and just like leaning forward. Like, did that just happen? Like,
right.
It is a wild, insane, like, I mean, right, we were talking about this a little bit. Movie starts with a dude like impaling, murdering people on this like gorgeous shot, right? Like, bathed in the sky is bathed in red, silhouetted. He's got the coolest armor ever on.
Yeah.
And then it like jumps to him stabbing a crucifix and it pouring blood out, and he drinks, and you're like, holy shit, am I watching maybe the coolest thing ever?
Yeah.
I was like, that is metal, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's nuts. This movie is absolutely it's a gothic fever dream. Is the only way I think I could describe it.
Yes, and I think it is a sexual gothic fever dream. Like the sexual part of the conversation, I think, is inextricable from talking about this movie, because like it is so deeply sensual.
What did you say to me, Ethan, right after it ended?
So that's the horniest movie I've ever seen.
It's kind of true.
It's so true, which I think is one of the really cool things about it. That's like, one of the things that
Dracula is
I love.
like a whole story in part about longing.
Yeah.
About like one longing for the need for blood, the need for love, the inability to find things in the daytime which everyone else lives in. It's all about that like disconnect and things. So of course they had to go and put the hottest people in it.
I mean, it's like, and they turn up the dials on the lust. You know what I mean? Like the lust for blood, the lust for flesh in both the
it's
creepy,
that shot when
like,
Keanu cuts his neck shaving, and he takes the razor from him and just turns from Keanu and just licks it really quickly.
Well, he looks like an addict at that point. Almost.
Yes,
He is,
literally,
yeah.
literally.
Well, I think he even makes a comment. He's like, lives are so hard to come by, or something like that, where you're like, oh, is he starving? Like,
I love all the blood puns. You're a man of great taste.
Yeah.
I never drink wine.
He giggles to himself after each. He's so pleased.
Oh, it's
So before watching it, kind of what was your perception? Like, what did you like? You have obviously, like, I'm pretty sure you've seen like the Patrick H. Willems video that like mentions it.
Yeah, so I've seen the Patrick H. Willems Coppola videos. I've seen those, which are great. They're awesome. I had seen like images, like I had seen the Vlad the Impaler armor. I've seen that stuff. I know what the guy looks like with the old man Dracula, Dracula,
Count Dracula.
but. And I knew Keanu was like horribly miscast in it.
Yeah.
Which, like, Keanu, buddy, baby, honey,
Baby,
I'm sorry.
sweetie,
I don't
sweetie.
want to be this guy, but you're maybe not great in this.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my perception. And that, like, yes, it's a famous movie, but not a very well regarded movie.
Yeah.
In watching it, I get it. But if you can't get into this a little bit, at the very least on a, like, craft level,
It is insane.
The sets are absolutely like genuinely some of the craziest sets I've ever seen.
Yeah.
In true, like you mentioned, the Universal horror Dracula is like famous for its sets, right?
Yeah,
These
absolutely.
giant gothic castles and stuff, like done in miniatures and obviously like with matte paintings and stuff. But I love that. I love its like commitment to practical effects too.
Yeah.
Like,
For me, it really feels like it feels like something that they like a movie, like one of those old Universal movies made now or made in the 80s or 90s. I can't remember when it came out. It feels like it feels so, but like what they would have done with the color, which is just dial it up to infinity, and like it just like has like that aesthetic of like using the miniatures and all that kind of stuff. Feels so like throwback, but like done to absolute perfection.
Well, and Coppola, I mean, he said he wanted to make kind of a love letter to classic horror movies, classic monster movies, and classic cinema. And in fact, like he wanted to use practical effects. He hired a special effects team, and they said, oh, this would be too much effort. Like, it would be too hard to do all this stuff. And then he fired them, then hired his son. And then his son said, oh, okay, I'll do it. And they used a bunch of practical effects and miniatures and stuff like that to make it seem...
Can you imagine telling the guy who made The Godfather, this might be a little too much effort?
Yeah.
I'm amazed they didn't burst into flames.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm amazed Francis Ford Coppola didn't drink their blood. Like, that's wild, because I think that's an awesome story, right? Like, we talk about nepotism a lot within the film industry. This doesn't feel like nepotism, though. This feels like a guy who was right for the job, who happened to be his
also,
kid.
Francis Ford Coppola is the king of nepotism.
Of course.
But in the sweetest, like most wholesome, like not like I like when Coppola does it, it feels okay because it's like him trying to work with his like wanting to be with his family.
Well, and then you also have somebody like Nick Cage, right, who became famous in a Coppola movie, but he changed his name to try to distance himself and try to make his own way, which I think is really, which the Scott Eastwood did for a long time, and it didn't work out for him. So now he's Scott Eastwood.
And it still hasn't worked that great because he's not in all that much
Not in all that much stuff. Anyway, here's my main question. I want to talk about this before we get into anything else. Is this movie campy? Is that a way you would describe it? Because I kept teetering from melodrama to campy, and I wasn't sure where it landed. Because there's
there's a Venn diagram of camp and melodrama, and there is part in the middle. Like I don't think those two are separate. They're completely separate from each other. I think you can be high melodrama and camp.
But I think you're right. I think you can be both. Ethan, what do you think?
I'd say it leans more on melodrama than camp, probably.
Okay,
but
I would agree with that.
My go-to example, right? West Side Story, melodrama.
Yeah,
like big emotions, big swings.
Yeah,
everything is to the roof, but it's not campy. And then on the other side, you have The Evil Dead, which is very camp, which is very like crazy. You're not quite sure if it's funny or they're just committing. Really, it's like that's that side. And this has moments where it's just like big emotions, big swings, but it also has moments like when they're talking about him. He's like, he must rest in the earth to regain his powers, and then it just cuts to him in a box like bleeding, and he's just like just his head and hands are together. Yeah. It's like I couldn't help but laugh at that.
It's like it's high melodrama shot with camp, you know what I mean? Like I think
that's an interesting way.
The visuals add camp, but not in a way that to look down on in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, and trust me, I don't say campy to look down. I love
don't
camp.
Get wrong.
You know what I mean? Like I was watching it the whole time, like this is crazy, and I'm kind of super into it.
Discussions, honestly, I feel like discussions about camp are incredibly difficult because I mean, do you remember like a few years ago when the Met Gala did the Met Gala's like theme for the year was camp, and everybody became an armchair like genius of what is and is not camp, and like it's an incredibly specific thing. It's like, what is it like when I can't. It was like a Supreme Court justice talking about pornography, and it was like I don't know how to describe it, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah,
it's like I feel the same way about camp.
That's an interesting way to talk about that. I probably agree with you. I just watching it, it was like a weird thing that stuck out to me, where I was like, some of this is really funny, but like it's also just dramatic. Like I can't quite find
like there is camp in it, but it is at the same time very high melodrama.
It's what we're talking about, the puns, right? It's just like I never
both
drink.
Those are straight up taken from the book too.
Oh,
I never
wild.
Drink,
okay,
and they do ...
Okay,
wine.
that was what I was going to ask about that. That's so funny. Well, okay, so like I have a lot of thoughts. It melted my brain. I should start there.
Yeah,
like. Do y'all have like craziest moments? Like, what was your experience? Did y'all watch it? I don't think you watched it alone.
I watched it with Meg. I watched it with Meg.
Ethan, did you watch it alone?
Watched it alone. I think still my favorite scene in the whole movie is the beginning where he renounces his god, stabs the cross.
I have a funny story about that. Down. When me and Meg watched it the first time, we watched it. I think it was like HBO Max or something. I can't remember. And that part there was no subtitles. So I legitimately thought, I was like, man, they're saying a lot of stuff and there's no subtitles for this. I was like, oh, well, I guess there's just no subtitles for this. But apparently like because we had subtitles turned off, it didn't show any subtitles at all. And so like I thought it was one of those sections of a movie where it's just like, oh, I just don't know what they say, but I can infer from what they're, and then like it happened later in the movie. I was like, am I supposed to be able to read? Like, am I supposed to be able to know
another
what
reason streaming blows?
Literally,
you know, like occasionally they'll do that. It's happened. The Raid. If you try to watch the Raid Redemption on HBO, HBO Max, baby. You don't get an option. Like you can swap it, but on the app on the TV, it's almost like I can't figure out how to do it. So and it defaults to the dub versus the sub, and I was like, oh, where's the dub? It's annoying. Super annoying. Anyway, that's a different rant.
For me, probably the craziest moment is where they're burning the boxes and stuff, and the green smoke flies into the building. He kills Tom Waits. He goes and finds her. They have blood sex, and then he turns into a giant bat and turns into a pile of rats. It's like
blood sex.
That section is like so gross and sexy, sexual, like in the most horrifying way. Like I love that section, and the practical effects of Dracula in his like bat form are phenomenal.
Yes. Well, because I was gonna say this because I looked at y'all at one point. This was after the in the garden, the first time you see like the.
That was the other scene I was going to mention.
Right. Well, I looked at these guys. This is really gross, but I looked at them and jokingly was like, "New kink unlocked."
I mean, same.
It's like he's like there. It's so weird, but like for a second I was like, why does that werewolf? Because I knew Dracula, werewolf, right? I'm so inundated in Underworld and Twilight that like I know vampires, werewolves. So I was like, oh, I guess a werewolf is a part of this. Because in that stage, it didn't look like a bat to me. To be honest with you, like
he was a little too furry to be.
It was a little too furry, and then later it was like, oh, this looks amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this. I don't even know if that first form isn't more like werewolf-like, because I mean he's turned into a wolf later in the film.
Yeah,
he can transform into different
animals.
Animals,
but he has that bat face though.
Yeah, the smushed face. There's no snout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was why I was confused. I was like, a weird choice to make a werewolf.
I think there's a lot of things like that where it's like it blurs some lines. Like this whole movie is, like you said, it's like a fever dream. It's like, so like even sections like that, like there is some like weird interpretations that I think you can make for it, which I really love.
But that scene you're to the sequence when he like turns into the mice, that was one where I just threw my hands up. I was like, whoa! Yeah. But the shot when he like backs up and just his eyes are visible for a second, they're like, more light! And then they shine it. It's like one of the coolest things I've seen in a horror movie in a long time.
Dude, so much of this movie is that for me.
Yeah.
So much of that movie is that. So Ethan, I have a question. Before this movie started, you said something about Van Helsing. I would love to hear whatever your take is on Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing.
Okay. So I don't hate it, but it's my least favorite Van Helsing out of like the three, like my three favorite Dracula movies, the Bela Lugosi, the Christopher Lee, and the Gary Oldman Dracula movies. It's my least favorite because he's obviously they're trying to go for an eccentric Van Helsing, but I think Anthony Hopkins makes some interesting weird acting choices.
Do you think they go too far in the eccentricities?
I think they do. Okay, so background about the making of this movie. Francis Ford Coppola has so much clout in the industry at this point that he sets up a month before production where the actors go to this ranch and they read the book as a cast. They read the entire book together, and they also like go through scenes together. And there's a scene whenever Van Helsing is introduced to Mina Harker. Van Helsing kind of picks her up and dances with her a little bit. Anthony Hopkins improvised that scene in the rehearsal, and Francis Ford Coppola was like, yes, that. And I don't know if that was the best acting choice. And there's another scene where he's like, he gets kind of drunk, and he's like, he starts humping the guy.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be the one when, because I was there when you said that about when you this was not your favorite, and when he started humping the guy, I went, I think this is it. I think this is why he said that.
He humps. He's like, this is he's the devil's concubine, and it's like, at some point, Francis Ford Coppola maybe could have said, okay, maybe dial it back just a little bit. I know we're going for eccentric Van Helsing, but that's an odd acting choice.
What year did this movie come out?
I don't know.
92. So he had just won an Oscar.
Okay, so I think Francis Ford Coppola might have been a little afraid to give a note there. He's like, well, he
just won for Silence of the Lambs.
And frankly, he might eat me. He might be that guy. You know,
it's like I think there's quite a bit of that where it's like some people aren't doing enough, and then there's Anthony Hopkins doing a little too much. You know what I mean? Like that being said, like I didn't honestly. When the first like couple times I watched it, didn't think anything of it. Didn't bother me at all. And then and then you made the comment about not loving Van Helsing in this. And then I was like, okay, I see what he's saying. Mm-hmm. I still like it. I still think it's like,
well, let me ask you this, Shane. What is your perception of Van Helsing? Like, what other things have you seen? Or like, because for me, Van Helsing has always been in my brain a monster hunter. Yeah. Like I'm so used to Hugh Jackman, right? Like,
right.
That's my perception of when you think of Van Helsing, you think of the guy with the big hat and the leather coat and the crossbow. Yeah. Like that was my perception. So when you said that and it shows up, I was like, part of me was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like he's like an older guy, like not doing the hunting anymore, but that isn't what they're doing. But I don't know what Van Helsing is in the book or what your perception was.
Yeah. I mean, like I had seen, I've seen the Bela Lugosi Dracula, but I don't remember it very well, like at all. I saw it when I was a kid, and I don't remember it very well at all. So my perception of Van Helsing is from the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing movie, legitimately. And so like that didn't color it for me because it feels like a completely different character.
For sure.
So it's like I took it for what it was on screen and you know took it for this like super eccentric pseudo scientist, or like you're not pseudo scientist but like
doctor,
spiritual voodoo doctor guy. I liked
they
it. They
introduce it with him dripping blood into a bat's mouth. The bat bites him and then he licks his finger. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Which I thought I also love how that scene is shot, where it's like they're in essentially a black void seemingly, and there's just these like all these doctors standing there watching him feed a bat, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What is school like back then?
Yeah. The way this movie plays with shadow, is just
so
phenomenal.
cool.
Just so cool. It's like this movie
sometimes literally with Dracula's shadow almost being this other thing. So cool.
That is what I'm talking about, my
yeah.
friend. Is like not only like in scenes where it's just like darkness, but also scenes where it's like they're literally playing, like literally doing like shadow puppet stuff, which I think is just so cool. I absolutely love the visuals of this movie. It's like today in 2022, feels like so many directors, cinematographers, colorists, editors, producers, whatever. It feels like everybody's so afraid of color. It's like you see these movies that come out. You see a movie like Pearl that comes out, and people are like, "Oh, a Technicolor masterpiece," or whatever people were calling it, or whatever the like one-line reviews that was. It's like it feels like so many people are so afraid of color. Like we talked about this earlier today. We're watching House of the Dragon right now, and I just describe it. It looks like concrete, and so to watch movies,
he describes it when you look at a castle that is concrete. It's a really weird moment for him to get that. But.
No, but it's like there are movies like this that are so inspiring because it's like this movie is just drenched in color. Every scene is, and it's not overcooked, it's not overdone, it's perfect for the level of melodrama, the level of camp, however you want to describe it. It's love
not Michael Bay saturation.
No. It's not sickly. It's not sickly. Like it's perfect. I love the way this movie plays with shadow and color, and and we just don't see that anymore, and I want more of it. Like I love it. I love it so much.
Bars.
Well,
Ethan, you also mentioned to me you wanted to talk about how Dracula, the characterization of him. So, like, what do you mean by that? Like, what's your take? What's your view of it?
So, I've introduced this movie to other people. My brother being part of that group, and the biggest complaint he had was like Dracula. This movie is a love story between Dracula and Mina Harker, and Dracula, you're seeing this love story, and in between, he's doing horrific, awful things also throughout it. And he was like, it doesn't gel with me. I have a hard time getting invested in the love story whenever he's also killing her best friend and doing this and that. But my perception is he has been the spawn of the devil, the spawn of Satan for 400 years up to this point. He has known nothing but evil. He has done nothing but evil for 400 years. You'd have to think your brain is almost like wired to only know evil.
I mean, the movie starts with him impaling people even before he renounces God and drinks from the bloody chalice.
But I'm saying I think his default is evil by that point, and so it's not inconsistent. It's consistent with the inconsistencies. He's good with he's kind and gentle with Mina, and in every other scene he's murderous.
I don't think this is a love story. I think it is a lust story. I don't think he loves Amina because of her character. He loves her because she is the reincarnation, or whatever, however that works, the reincarnation of his original love. He doesn't love her. He loves the idea of his original wife.
But she clearly has memories of that previous thing.
I think there's points where they kind of, Mina Harker and Elizabetha kind of almost merge into one person at points because she has memories that
She describes
Transylvania.
Yeah.
You know, and so I get that perception for sure, but I think there are moments of genuine love between the two characters.
I'm torn on this actually, because I like both of the sides of this. I think it is both a story, a lust story, and a love story. Neither of which involve Keanu, because like that relationship is kind of nothing to me. I'll be honest. There are certain things in this movie I'm not into.
Yeah,
and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit, but in the discussion of this, like I do think he loves her, but I think it's a different perception of love. I think it's love to the closest equivalent of what he can feel.
Here's my thing. I never read her having these memories as those being her memories. I read that as more of like a trance or like a spell, because he does that with what's her name, the redhead,
Lucy.
He does that with Lucy. You know what I mean? He like trances her to come out to where he can, that scene that create the, like, I don't think it is memories. I think that is like him putting a trance or a spell or something like that, or maybe tapping into her previous life or something like that. I never read it as her actually having these memories.
Okay, so
because that's the thing is, like, the minute he's out of her view, she goes back to loving.
Well, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, but she still carries feelings for him long after. I mean, she keeps on saying how much she misses her prince, but this is the last time.
And then
I need to stay faithful to.
And then as soon as
Jonathan,
she's
basically.
with baby daddy Keanu, sorry, she's immediately like, I understand now the feelings I feel for him, my mysterious friend, or however she calls it. So I'm gonna be. This is super interesting, Shane, because I fully read it as she is kind of. You mentioned it right before we started the podcast. This idea of like these people being woven throughout time, like this generational, like decades, century long thing where she's now reincarnated as this new person. And that I did read it as her memories coming back, and it's his influence that's awakening the thing. Because I do think there are moments when she's like in a trance, for sure. I think that's part of it. But I also think it's because he's around that these things are awakening within her. Because Ethan's right. Like I think whenever they're not together, she's still thinking about him. It's not the trance. She literally, like, at one point leaves the country that he's in, gets with her homeboy, and at their wedding, she's clearly like, I don't want to do this. Like,
would you want to marry Keanu when he looked like that, though? The gray hair.
I'm not going to lie to you, dude. I would marry Keanu at any point. I'd marry Keanu from The Matrix when he jumps out of the machine in the first time.
Even with that accent or lack thereof.
Okay, now that's a harder. He doesn't need to talk. I can just look at him.
There you go. Okay, fair.
Like you view Dracula. I'm doing it for the body.
There'd be no talking.
No. And to be clear, I don't think you're wrong. I think that's actually a fascinating way to look at this movie. I think it's a different take, but I almost find it more interesting for me as a viewer that he isn't putting a trance on her, that he does love her, because that's why he's doing it. And that's the thing is, like, even when he is about to win and she's literally drinking his blood, and he's like, no, don't you I can't damn you to this again. I can't be the reason you.
Fair.
I thought that was really a beautiful sentiment.
Bars.
No,
I agree. That's definitely a great argument.
And to be clear, I don't think either of these are correct. I think this is very much.
There's one that's correct, and I think it's mine. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's the thing.
Ethan, hold my mic. I'm going to kill him.
So much about this movie is lust and love. So much of this is lust.
The line between the two
versus love. Yeah. I mean, it's like what's the redhead? What's her name?
Lucy.
You said it earlier, and I immediately went in one ear out the other. Lucy. It's like her story is so much about lust.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? And it's not about love. You know, and like So I think both of these interpretations are correct in very different ways.
Well, and Ethan, just your talk on where you started this whole thing with, like, his characterization. I'm with you on this. I think it's in line. I think 400 years of sleeping in dirt with no one around and becoming this literal, like, demon at times.
Yeah.
I think that does something to how you perceive love. And also it's think about Frankenstein. Frankenstein in the original OG, like the story and stuff, he kills that girl because he doesn't understand, right? Like his view of the world is warped and different than our view of the world. We're like, yes, we're looking at him killing her friend, but I think that was more out of necessity that he needed to feed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think at some point it does become just vicious because he's feeding on her at first, and then Mina leaves to get married, and then he's like,
Yes.
"Oh, I'm gonna kill her." Now.
She rejects.
He's not gonna kill her. He's gonna turn her into a vampire and subject her to this torturous
yes.
life, which then he doesn't do to Mina,
or tries
to not do it.
Well,
to Mina
speaking of the scene when Lucy becomes a vampire and she's laying in bed, she goes, "Rah!" and like screams and blood just explodes. It's awesome. It's so good.
There's so many of those scenes. It's like when Van Helsing's like killing her and she just barfs blood on him. Oh, it's so good.
That's cool. The three step of that scene that happens, and then they stake her, and then they just chop off her head, and then they move on. And I was like, "What are we watching?" This is
Yeah, there's where it's like she's they're having dinner with Van Helsing, and he's cutting off slabs of bloody meat and handing it to them and being like, eat. And then it's like, what did you do to her? And then it cuts, like, hard cut to them sitting there bloody and tired with her head resting on the table.
Well, that, and I also love, he's like, did she tell me how she did? Yes, she died a horrible death. We cut her head off and then we burned it.
Yeah.
It's so funny. His callousness.
And moments like that is when I love Anthony Hopkins' performance as it's just there's two or three parts where I'm just like, oh, it's too much, a little too eccentric.
For me, it's specifically the weird part when he's drunk and like humps.
I don't love that. I don't love the dancing with Mina at the beginning. I guess those are the two big ones. I don't love whenever obviously he's in a trance at the end, but whenever like Mina kind of seduces him, I don't know.
That comes a little bit out of nowhere for me.
Well, and it just kind of feels like they kind of had.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. Like, yeah, like there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes out of nowhere and then leaves immediately.
Every time his Dracula's familiars or whatever, the concubines or whatever they call them, every time they show up, I'm like, what is going on, dude? This movie might take the weirdest sex scene of all time for the first 2 or 3 slots of that list. When they're freaking which, by the way, I think that scene is so cool, right? When Keanu's sitting on the bed and he starts hearing this thing and you see the footsteps on the thing, and they press in the carpet and they like rise out of the bed and lay him down, and then they start drinking his blood.
Well, the transition where it's like first it's just like kissing and then out of nowhere you just start seeing blood, and then you start seeing teeth and like
the mirror shot on the thing when it's like.
Yeah. It's so cool. Yeah, I absolutely love it. The one that it's like too far feels like it's with a nipple.
Well, not even
It starts like bleeding out, squirting out of the nipple.
It's the nipple and the fact the blowjob is also.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I have another question now that we're. The dude who picks him up at the beginning, not the beginning, but when he gets to the castle. The guy who it
lifts him into
reaches and his arm goes further than it should and it lifts him. Who was that dude? And please, can I get an amen that dude fucks? Like, that dude fucks.
Okay, can we also agree that Dracula in his the gray suit with the blue glasses also fucks hard? What were you gonna say, Ethan?
I was just saying the driver is supposed to be Dracula.
Okay,
and also,
is it?
There's an interesting. Again, I watched this years ago, but I think if I remember right, there was a behind the scenes, and Francis Ford Coppola said, in the book, I love it when it says the driver picks Jonathan up and puts him in the carriage. And he's like, I don't know how to do that, but I love that imagery in my head. And apparently, so you see him think it picks him, and it looks really awkward whenever it looks like he literally does just kind of pick him up with no effort and put Jonathan. Keanu Reeves is on a lift. And it lifts him into the carriage.
So fun.
It's so cool. I love it. I love that.
That again, going to the costume and production design of this movie, I like that dude randomly shows up and it's Dracula now, I know. But if you didn't know that, you'd just be like, who is this guy and why does he need to be the cover of a metal album?
Literally.
His claw-like hand and giant head and so cool.
I love it.
I'm super into so much of this movie.
Yeah.
I think complaint-wise, I don't need the crazy guy who's like, Master. Master.
You don't want Tom Waits?
It's not that,
Tom Waits.
It's not that I don't want Tom Waits. It's just like for a lot of the movie, you're like, what was the point of this? And then it doesn't fully pay off for me. Where I'm like,
it was
this is
Tom
fine.
Waits. That's all you need.
You know,
it's
my
Tom
bad.
Waits being absolutely insane.
I should have known. Well, it's that for a lot
Screw
of
you. I'm changing my recommendation to what it was originally to being Mule Variations by Tom Waits. So go listen to that album. Tom Waits rules.
yeah, podcast over.
Podcast over.
No, I don't. For a lot of the beginning, I don't love when every time we cut back to Winona Ryder and them. I'm like not into that until Dracula shows up, and then I think it's awesome. Like then I think all that story works.
Well, I'll say one thing about with Renfield being included into this movie, the Tom, what's the actor's name?
Tom Waits.
Tom Waits.
So I think Francis Ford Coppola was very beholden to the book, and most adaptations don't include Renfield in the story because basically Renfield plays the Jonathan Harker part before Jonathan Harker ever goes to the castle. He goes to the castle and then goes crazy. A lot of adaptations take him out. They also take out the three suitors, Quincy, Arthur, and
Dr. Jack.
Dr. Jack. And so I think he just said, I want to have every character that's in the book, and I'm not going to take any out. But most adaptations take those four characters out because they really don't play a huge part in the story as much as like Jonathan, Mina, Dracula.
I mean, there's a reason why
Van
he calls
Helsing.
it Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Baron Strucker's Dracula.
for context for this bit, every time Spencer would say the name of the movie, he would always mispronounce at least one of the things. And like, look, I'm probably mispronouncing, but he would always say Struckers.
I would say Struckers or Strokers. Where I was like, I was like, wait, no, and it was completely on accident every single time.
Yeah.
So it's Baron Strucker's Dracula.
So Baron Strucker's Dracula. Baron Strucker's Vampire.
We were talking about this also earlier. You had kind of an interesting thought or theory on why Anthony Hopkins plays two characters in this.
Well, I had just heard it before that it was maybe the idea. So at the beginning, Anthony Hopkins plays a priest that basically, by the way, in the scene, Dracula's bride has just killed herself, and he's crying over it, and the priest says, by the way, she's damned and she's going to hell. And by the way, you're not going to see her again.
The wildest shit about that is I was watching it right, and he's like, she has that line where it's like, perhaps God will reunite us in heaven. And I literally thought, that's not what they believe, though. And then he said it, and I was like, damn, I get it. Go off, Dracula.
Maybe not the right time to mention that fact.
So callously. He's just like...
No, but yeah, so he plays that priest at the beginning, and some people have theorized that... that's Van Helsing, and Van Helsing is immortal. I kind of like the theory that he's just maybe a descendant of.
Yeah,
I think that makes more sense to me.
It does, and I like the fact because it's the story, the rivalry between Dracula and Van Helsing has always been kind of man over monster. And if you make it like a monster over like another immortal being, I think it takes away kind of some of the kind of cool aspect.
That
of it
was
too.
what I was gonna say. Is I'm way more interested in this band of humans stopping the incarnation of the devil of some or a devil spawn or whatever we want to call him, like a monster.
Yeah, I think that also fits in with the conversation we were having earlier of them being like intertwined through time. You know what I mean? Like, because like Mina is either like some kind of descendant reincarnation,
or just looks like,
or just looks super like whatever. Like, I think that same conversation could be said about Van Helsing in this as well, where it's like I think he is some sort of descendant, like, you know what I mean, like where like he obviously clearly is connected to Dracula's story in some way, but I wouldn't think that would be the same. It's like I could see why somebody would draw that conclusion, but that kind of feels like a very like 2020 way to look at it, being like, oh, but you know, in the extended universe, you know what I mean? Oh,
in
like,
Dracula Untold, when he like pops back up in modern times,
it just feels like one of those like internet listicle of like conspiracy theory Easter egg stuff. You know what I mean? It's like they're playing the same characters. That must mean they're the same person. It's like, no, like I think it's more. I think it's not that complicated.
I'm laughing now, realizing you said the Patrick Willems video earlier. Well, Patrick Willems does a Coppola one, so he talks about it in that.
It's
but he also
80s,
does the untalked about Dark Universe series where there was like a Wolfman movie with Jack Nicholson. It was all these weird Universal monsters.
That was the one where he talked about it.
He talked about it. I'm just now realizing I kind of want to see that in modern times done like this, where it's like not really a shared universe. They just all happen to be monsters done in this style. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Love to watch a mummy movie like this.
Yeah. I would love to watch any movie like this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just like, they don't make them like they used to, boys. They just don't make them like they used to.
I just want to backtrack and say that's like a fascinating interpretation of the Van Helsing of like maybe he's just like Mina, he's just he's a reincarnation or something like that or something like that. I don't know why I've never put those two and two together. That's fascinating. That's awesome.
I think that's way more interesting if you ask me than the dude who's like, because that's like, it doesn't make any sense that it would take him this long to figure out that this is Dracula.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if it was the same character, why would he immediately why would he be this far from him at this point? If he's like, if he's.
Well, by the way, and I've never really subscribed to that interpretation. I just
No,
think
don't
it's
get
an
me wrong.
interesting theory. But I've always thought of it just like a descendant. But now thinking of it as like more like you said of a reincarnation almost.
These
like
three
Mina.
that were witnesses to this event.
That's more fascinating to me, actually.
That's really cool. I think that's a fun idea, a fun way to look at it.
Yeah. I think we should also take some time to shout out the costumes in this movie.
Yes.
Literally like some of the coolest costumes of all time. I need to pull up her name, the costume designer.
Just throwing out some, the Vlad the Impaler suit, the cape on Dracula when he's in the castle.
Almost feel it.
Yeah, legitimately, it's so cool. It's like so long and decadent. Like, another moment I love is when Keanu is shaving right before the weird licking thing that I also love. But like the hand reaching out and you don't see it in the mirror because you can't.
Yes.
And he puts it on, and when he whips around, you're expecting him to be there, but he's on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
So cool.
Did you catch the where he's reading the newspaper and he isn't in the reflection?
So that's such a good touch.
It's just a fun little detail. I love that so much. Iko or Aiko, I could be completely Iko Ishioka. Shout out, literally like somebody.
You didn't have to go off this hard.
And she went off insanely hard.
Yeah.
And then like, have you seen her Oscar acceptance speech where she's literally dressed like a character, like dressed like Dracula?
No, but I'm gonna look
it's
that
amazing.
up.
She's in these super long, beautiful robes, and she looks like one of the characters out of the movie. It's amazing.
That is so cool.
She is like the coolest. It's amazing. Like, and like one of my favorites is him like where he's in old Dracula and he's in the like gold like robes.
Yeah.
Those are so freaking cool. I love the costumes in this movie. Absolutely adore them. Yeah.
Big time.
Anything else? Any other thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
To rattle off a listicle of things that I really dig about this movie, right? Moments, things like that. I'm just going to go through a bunch. The opening scene, right? Just not only the scene in the church where he like stabs, which is also the coolest thing I've ever seen.
It's the coolest.
Is the like it's like that one shot of him like on one or multiple shots kind of done in the same way. Then on the battlefield and like the red sky. I think that looks gorgeous and very classical and awesome. That they play with later during a like kind of a chase sequence where you see the like shadow puppet.
Yeah.
They're like the light thing where it's the battle, which is like such a small touch that means nothing, but when you catch it, you're like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that little moment's awesome. All of the ways you're talking about, they play with shadow and the way they play with transitions where they're like super over the top. The train one with the eyes and then coming over and then layering the book over him and then fading the back out and then fading the book out. Like all that stuff is so massive and huge and I'm super, super into it.
Yeah.
Practical effects rule so hard.
Yes.
They're so good.
Yep.
The bat backing up into darkness and you just see his red eyes. One of the coolest things I've ever seen. Him turning into mice. My jaw hit the floor. Nuts. Anthony Hopkins played Hannibal Lecter, and the most metal thing I've ever seen him do was chop off 3 vampires' heads and throw them into a giant canyon. Yeah. So cool.
Well, and then he yells out, Dracula, Dracula,
I love the moment whenever they're like, you're a doctor, can you not believe in things beyond this? And then they like start talking and they turn around and he's gone and he's over there. He just comes out smoking a cigar. He's like, you see what I mean? It's a hilarious, fun moment. Them fighting Vampire Lucy's great. When Vampire Lucy becomes Vampire Lucy and blood just explodes all over the room. Awesome. Yeah, like this.
I think so much of the casting in this movie is phenomenal and terrible. Like, you know what I mean? Like Gary Oldman is like one of my favorite performances of his. I think the girl who plays Lucy is phenomenal.
She's great.
I think she's so good in this. And then you've got Keanu. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's like I really like Anthony Hopkins personally. I really like him in this. Like, that means he does go too far. I think they could have reeled him in, and had they done that, it would have been like pitch perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I think the casting in this movie is really, really interesting.
Well, and I want to mention with Keanu Reeves too, and also Winona Ryder. I think I watched an interview and Francis Ford Coppola said Winona Ryder, she's just got this Snow White kind of quality to her. Like, she's a classic beauty for Hollywood, you know?
Yeah.
And I think Keanu is kind of a classic, like Prince Charming almost. And even though the accent isn't always great or ever great in this movie, he's still got a quality of he's a leading man, and he kind of fits in that character of someone who's going through the unexplained, the horror, and he came out through on the other side.
When
of it,
he's not talking, I think he's pretty good.
It's like, honestly, like part of me thinks like I wish he just would have not done an accent. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
well, yeah. Do the no movie does this, and not to invoke a movie directed by a bad person, so I won't say the person's name. Valkyrie. Tom Cruise does an accent for 30 seconds, and then they just fade into his regular voice, which is, by the way, fine. It's the same principle as when like actors who should be speaking different languages speak English.
Yeah, don't they do that in like Hunt for Red October?
Hunt for Red October goes out of its way to do that.
Yeah.
Where like they're talking, they like zoom in on his mouth and he starts speaking English, and then they zoom out. Have you seen Hunt for the Red October, Ethan?
I haven't.
It's a really cool movie. If you're into like spy thrillers, really like that movie. Anyway, we can
Love
talk about
Sean
that.
Connery.
Yeah, he's great in it. I think the last thing we need to talk about is lessons, really.
Yeah.
Like what we take away. Ethan, I don't know if you have something, you have the longest history with it. If there's something you keep coming back to or something like that.
Well, I've mentioned that first scene quite a bit, and I just wanted to mention, have you guys seen like Dracula Untold? It came out like 2014 or
I've
something
seen
like
it.
that.
I've seen
okay.
it.
No,
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
You're not missing a whole lot. The point is,
I didn't think so.
it's an origin story of Dracula, and in that movie, how does he become a vampire? The most stereotypical way that you can become a vampire. He goes into a cave, finds an older vampire, and gets him to bite him, and that's how he becomes a vampire. It's so like kind of basic, boring. And for this, Dracula's always had. He hasn't really had an origin, even in the book. Like later on, after the book came out, Stoker kind of said, "Oh, maybe he's Vlad the Impaler," and this, that, and that kind of became the part of the legend. But he's never really had that origin, and it's kind of been a part of his character, the mystery, the mystique. I don't know if I wanted to. I don't know if a lot of people want to know if he was sired, or if they just want to imagine him being the first and original vampire. And in this, if you're gonna give him an origin, make sure to give him a damn good one. And there's a good one where he literally renounces his god, who he fought like unimaginable battles for, and now renounces him and literally just says, "Okay, I'm going for the other team. I'm going for the devil." And,
if you can't beat them, join them, boys.
Well, an important note on that is that they make it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
From an emotional standpoint, it works. I'm like, I get it. I get why you're doing this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no, I think that is an incredible point for sure. I mean, because I honestly didn't know that about his origins. Mm-hmm. That the fact that they've always been a little bit mysterious, and the fact that it was kind of like postscript being like, maybe it was Vlad the Impaler. I don't know, which I just think is the coolest shit.
Yeah.
Like making him Vlad the Impaler is the coolest shit because that dude is nuts. And if there was ever going to be a dude that would turn into a vampire, Vlad the Impaler is a good choice. Yeah, super cool. Spencer, what have you learned? What did you take away?
So, I mean, there's a lot you can take away, right? Like commitment to atmosphere is an important one.
Yeah.
Like I think this movie falls apart if sections of it feel wrong.
Yeah.
Like that's partly what I don't like about every time we cut back to Winona Ryder for a little bit, is it just feels like a different movie a little bit. It feels a little less interesting. But then they correct and they collide, and it's kind of about infecting her a little bit. And so the movie becomes infected and she kind of gets pulled into the gothic side.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I think the ending is one thing I definitely will think about a lot, where like, I didn't think the power of my love could change whatever she's saying, and it changes him and fixes him, and then she still kills him.
Yeah.
Because he needs to die.
Yeah.
I think it's a fascinating thing where like every part of my body was like, I'm going to laugh. This is silly, but it worked.
Yeah.
And I don't quite know why.
Yeah.
I think, again, it's part of that, like you said, the opening scene being so memorable and so good and so interesting for like Dracula as a legend or whatever. I think that ending should also be talked about in that way, where it's like tragic. It's so sad. Like they finally found each other again, and she healed him and turned him back into something of a human. And then he is the one that goes, end my suffering.
Yeah.
And then she kills him. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't exactly know why it works, and I want to study that more.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing there is your atmosphere matters, and getting all that stuff, production design, tone, all that matters. But if you don't stick the landing emotionally, I'm not going to remember your movie. And it opens with emotion and it closes with emotion. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that would be my like thought and takeaway of the things I really want to think about on it.
Yeah. I think to kind of bridge off of that, I think it is just commitment.
Yeah.
Like they commit so hard to literally everything. And I love that. Like I think if you don't crank it to 11 in literally every scene, I don't think this movie works, because there's a lot of sections that like don't make a ton of sense, but because it's like a fever, it's a like sexy vampire fever dream the entire time. Like you were just like floating through this cloud of confusion throughout the entire movie. Like it slows down and speeds up, slows down and speeds up. Like I don't think that would work if you didn't commit this hard to the visuals and the gothic tone. And like, I don't think it works unless you commit as hard as they do. It's like, you have to give Coppola that one credit for his entire filmography, is that man half-asses nothing.
Truly. I agree with this.
Like he like puts in, like, that's why he's always over budget. That's why he's, you know what I mean? He refuses to waver on his vision and on putting in everything he possibly can.
Which again makes it hilarious that these makeup artists and special effects artists said that this was too much work to this man. Like,
yeah.
What were they thinking?
I don't know. Because I like the thing that I loved about it was the gothic tone and the lush visuals and the absolute the absolute insanity.
One that they don't
visuals.
explain the insanity.
Yeah, no.
They never sit down and tell you the rules of being a vampire.
They
you just
do not
kind of get it.
The closest you get is he said you can be in the sunlight.
Yeah.
Nelson says he can be in the sunlight, surprisingly. You know?
Yeah, you're like, oh, I thought that was like one of the things. No, they never explain why candles light on fire when he walks in a room. You know what I mean? But like,
it's like
you get it.
There's like that 15 seconds of conversation, like right before they go to burn the ground.
They tell you like learned rules to solve an objective, but they never explain half the shit.
Yeah, he's like, he can turn into a mist, he can turn into animals, he can do this, he can do that. Okay, let's go burn this shit. It's like they never like slow down to be like, okay, so in 1492 was the day of his birth, and
they never explain the Matrix. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they don't waste your time with that, because who cares? It's Dracula. Like, he can do a bunch of cool shit. Who cares? It's cool. Like, just jump on in. Like,
I'm all in for that.
And I absolutely love it. Yeah, that is probably my biggest takeaway, is just like 130,000% commitment. I love it. I love this movie.
It's so good.
Movie rules.
So
Best.
cool.
Yeah. So in summation, if you don't like this movie, get out of here. All my homies love this movie. All my homies hate people who don't like this movie. Can I get an amen, boys?
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that pretty much wraps up our kind of main conversation for the A segment. let's roll on into the B segment. I have kind of a fun idea. I know, Spencer, you had an idea of maybe like a question you wanted to pose.
Yeah.
Do you want to do yours first?
Let's do mine. I think mine will be shorter. Because we kept talking about how bad Keanu is in this movie, which other Keanu character would you like to replace him with and put in this movie?
So like putting in
John Wick in this movie. Neo is in this movie. Johnny Utah is in this movie.
If it was John Wick, the movie would be over.
It would be really. I mean, he's known to kill people with pencils.
He's the Baba Yaga.
He's the Baba Yaga.
Baba Yaga versus Dracula.
Yeah.
That needs to be a thing. That
I would pay any amount of money.
What's that movie where, what is it, The Lake House, where they have like a mailbox that travels time?
That Sandra Bullock movie?
The Sandra Bullock Keanu movie?
Sandra Bullocksies?
Sandra Bullocksies. That one. I would like to see that.
Like to see that guy.
I'd like to see that dude because he'd be the same amount of impotent.
Do you have one?
I'm trying to think of how many...
My funny answer is there's this movie called Knock Knock, and it's about him like these. I haven't seen it, but I know one scene from it, right, where like it's raining out, his wife is gone and his family's gone or whatever, and these two, like Ana de Armas, I think, is one of them.
Yeah,
like, knock on the door,
okay.
and he lets them in, and they like have sex and eat pizza. And there's this scene where he's tied to the chair, and he's like, "Why are you doing this? I gave you pizza." He's like, as part of the monologue, I want to see that guy get stuck in the situation with the three vampire women.
I let you.
He ain't
eat
getting out
pizza.
of it, you know.
That's so funny.
But the real answer is I want to see John Wick fight Dracula.
Yeah,
that's the funny one. That's the good one. The
That
funny
is
one
a
is the
very
character from
that
Knock Knock.
completely changes what this movie is, but I'm into it.
Yeah. Well, Ethan's right. There is no movie. It's over. He wins.
It's
over.
Baba Yaga v Dracula.
But yeah, what was your B segment you're doing in your question?
Would love, it's honestly kind of bridging off of what your idea was. Let's go down the cast list and recast this movie in 2022. Who would we want to see that? So let's start off with, well, we're going to go from the kind of the bottom of the cast list and go up. So Renfield, who would be your casting for Renfield? I love the idea of it being like a super eccentric musician because like I love Tom Waits, and so I like look, do I think he's like amazing in this movie? I don't know, but like I don't know if I'd
Taylor Swift.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Standing by it.
Or just Tom Waits in 2022. Like
True.
So okay, who would you pick? Who would you pick as your
Taylor Swift?
Okay, like give me like an actual, give me like
I'm
a
trying
real
to think of like eccentric musicians because I do think
it doesn't have to be a
no, but I think that's who's like an older.
Who's the dude who plays? Oh God, what's his name? The German scientist in the MCU. What's his name?
Toby.
Yeah, no, I don't know his name.
Toby.
That guy would be really good.
Toby.
Something, I don't know. Toby Hooper.
It's definitely not Toby Hooper, but yes.
I understand that.
I'd go younger. Would
you go younger than that?
Yeah, I'd go Michael Pitt. From Hannibal fame.
I have not seen Hannibal.
A lot of people haven't. I'm trying. He was in Boardwalk Empire too. He's Mason Verger in Hannibal.
Oh, that is a great pick.
The first one, yeah.
That's really good.
Okay, we going with him?
We're going with him. That's a great one. That is such a good pull.
Let's go for people that no one knows.
Hey man, let's bring up. Let's
replace. Yeah.
The whole movie is of unknowns.
Lucy. Who would you cast as Lucy?
Do you have an answer for this, Shane?
I don't have.
She's particularly tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Scarlett Johansson's like the first person that comes to mind, but I don't like that.
I think she'd be very good, but I don't know if...
You know what? A weird one. Mackenzie Davis might be able to do that really well.
Who's Mackenzie Davis?
She's Terminator Dark Fate is like the biggest. But she's in Happiest Season as well.
Yes. Okay.
I think she's great, and I think she can play that kind of like mischievous pretty well. She doesn't typically, but I think that would be fun.
I dig it. No,
I'm in for her. I like her.
Let's do it. I don't know who that is still. Let's
do it. Quincy. He's the Texan, right?
Yeah.
The Texan.
Scott Eastwood? Come on, he needs a gig, man.
Scott Eastwood in here, dude.
Dude needs a gig.
If he grow a good mustache, then Scott Eastwood is it.
Yeah, who would be a good? Who's like when you think
Glenn Powell could do that.
Yeah.
Glenn Powell would be a really good in that role. The kind of cocky, like big tough guy from Texas. Like I could buy Glenn Powell in that role.
Who's Glenn Powell?
Top Gun Maverick. He plays.
Okay, yeah, that's who I thought.
Or honestly, speaking of Top Gun Maverick, Miles Teller could do that role really well.
You think?
I think Miles Teller could do that. But Glenn
I
Powell
like
would
Glenn
be
Powell
my
better.
pick. That's
I like
my
Glenn
pick.
Powell better.
But
Arthur, he's Carrie Ellis. Which shout out to Carrie Ellis. I
love that guy.
Always good.
He's,
so yeah.
so
you need somebody
debonair.
Yeah, literally that was the exact word I was going to use, is debonair. My mind goes to who's the actor who plays Rob Stark?
Oh,
Richard
that's
Madden.
a good one.
Richard Madden. Richard Madden might be a little too tough though.
Yeah,
Like that's the one side of that where it's like he might be a little too like rough and tumble.
I think you could give him
No, you could
a little.
for sure,
You know what I mean?
for
Like I think
sure.
you can. I think you could push him there.
Richard Madden's a fun one. I like Richard Madden. Trying to think of other British people too. With him, weirdly, I feel like it has to be a Brit.
Well, we made the mistake with Keanu. We're not making that mistake again.
And he's not wrong. Richard Madden's good. Let's go Richard Madden.
Richard
Yeah.
Madden.
I like Richard Madden a lot.
So Dr. Jack. You need somebody, a cocaine addicted. You need, you need somebody squirrely.
Honestly, Hugh Dancy, dude.
See, and I was actually thinking about Hugh Dancy for Arthur before, but I don't want to keep on picking Hannibal people.
Why not?
But
Wait till you hear who I think should play Dracula.
I thought about him too.
We'll get there.
Too.
Hugh Dancy's a really good actor. He was in famously
The Anne Hathaway movie too. The
Enchanted.
Enchanted.
He's in Enchanted.
Ella Enchanted.
No, Enchanted's the Amy Adams one. Is it Ella Enchanted?
I think right. Carrie Yules is also in.
Of course he is.
I believe you. Who are we picking?
I think Hugh Dancy could
yeah.
do
Hugh
it.
Dancy?
I think Hugh Dancy's a good pick.
Let me see. Hold on, let me look up this man.
I just need to make you watch Hannibal.
I think that's what we have found. He looks like a Dr. Jack.
He plays a good kind of like timid kind of squirrely guy.
All right, Jonathan Harker, Keanu Reeves' character.
Keanu Reeves, but today.
Yeah, there you go. No,
Kit Harington could be kind of good in that role.
Yeah.
There's someone better, but Kit
there's
Harington
somebody
could be
better, but I don't think that's a bad choice.
Well, actually, here we go. Adam Driver.
Interesting.
I think Adam Driver has the right amount of like being incredibly sexy while also being just an incredible actor who could do that fever dream thing so well, who has the right amount of like, I believe you can handle yourself for all the stuff in the action-y sequences and the escape sequences, but is still enough of a guy where it's like, I also kind of believe he would get sucked into this.
Yeah.
I don't think Adam Driver's perfect, but I think Adam Driver would be a good pick. And also, I think Adam Driver makes any movie he's in 15% better.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I think he'd be. There's somebody better, but I think he's a good one.
I actually like Kit Harington.
Kit Harington's good for that role. I think he has the right energy.
That's a coin flip for me. What do y'all think?
Let's go Kit.
Kit.
Let's go Kit.
All right, Van Helsing.
Now this is a tough one. You got to go older actor. Hugh Jackman today.
I literally thought that for a second.
I think Hugh Jackman could play this version of that quite well. Honestly, somebody in this.
Do we have to go old?
I think we need to go.
Well,
old.
yeah, because he's got to be.
prefer.
Yes.
Yeah, no, he's got to be Dr. Jack's mentor.
Yeah. Now,
Do they have to be alive? They have to be alive for this game?
Yeah, I think so.
if we didn't go too old, Jude Law would be a good Van Helsing in this way, but he's a little on the young side, so I don't know if he
I
counts.
kinda think.
But I do think Jude Law could kill that. Could an Idris Elba be pretty good? Now that he's aged into kind of a salt and pepper thing,
That could be fun.
I could like that.
That could be fun. I could be into that.
Yeah.
I could be into that. I could be into that. Screw it. Call it. Okay, next we've got Mina, sorry. And I've got two ideas, and
Okay.
I think Spencer's going to love both of them.
Is Florence Pugh one
Florence
of them?
Pugh
Yeah, my
or
first
Kristen Stewart.
thought. Oh, my.
because I think Kristen Stewart has that like, how did you describe it earlier?
Almost like a Sleeping Beauty, almost.
Yeah, I think
She played Sleeping Beauty once.
she played Snow White.
Same
Get
difference.
wrecked, idiot. I think she's got that kind of like ethereal beauty.
Think we could get her to be a vampire again?
Literally. Oh, wait till you see what I have to say about Dracula.
I had this thought as well.
I like Kristen Stewart a little better. I mean, Florence Pugh is amazing.
Florence Pugh can do anything. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I really dig Kristen Stewart for that role. I think she's got the right amount of like gothic energy.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I think. I think so too.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
agree on that one?
Yeah.
Kristen Stewart.
All right. Dracula. I alluded to it earlier. I honestly think freaking Robbie Pats.
Robbie
would be
Pats
great.
loves playing a fucking weirdo.
Dude, I think he would be so good as this Dracula.
Pat weirdo, if you will.
A bat weirdo.
Like, part of me thinks that I think that like it would be weird if if Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson. I don't think both of them would agree.
Hey, when they come back for Midnight Suns, you just hold your tongue.
But like, I really think that he would be great as this freaking weirdo. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
especially now at this point in his career. Like,
Yeah.
I think that he would be perfect for this. I know you alluded to somebody earlier. as
I
well.
alluded to another Hannibal actor, Mads Mikkelsen,
Think
who
he'd
can
be
do
great.
He'd be
anything.
phenomenal.
And he
He'd
already
also-
looks like a weirdo.
Yeah.
Like, it's just perfect.
Do we think Mads over?
I think maybe Mads over Pattinson,
I'd
even though
be-
Robert Pattinson has my whole heart.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one that I think was more stereotypical. Those two are kind of more interesting choices to me. Jason Isaac, who plays Lucius Malfoy from Harry Potter, I thought could be a pretty interesting.
Interesting.
That's wild.
A little older if we're going for Kristen Stewart for
my-
Mina.
My
but
my last experience with him was his tenure on The Flash, the CW show.
Interesting. That's an interesting choice, though. I like that.
I like it. I think yours are more interesting though. But
Yeah.
I do like Jason Isaac as a possibly kind of. I guess Mads Mikkelsen also is older. but,
Mads would tear it up.
oh, absolutely.
Mads would tear it up.
And it would finally feel like a movie where he's utilized correctly.
Surely, yeah.
Wait, you don't think he was utilized correctly in Doctor Strange?
No.
No. I
I think he does the best he can.
I think Mads Mikkelsen is the one. I think he's
Yeah.
a great.
I think so. I think
So that's
it's great.
3 Hannibal casting. Let's
Hell yes.
We gotta get
We're
these guys.
feeding those guys. Hannibal got canceled. They need the work.
They hit them and Scott Eastwood. These dudes need work. Yeah. All right. Cool. No, I think
That's a fun cast, dude.
Super
Yeah.
fun cast. I love that. Super fun. All right. Cool. Do we want to roll right into recommendations then?
Yeah.
Spencer, kick it off. What do you?
Okay, so first of all, I'm positive in one of the last 2 episodes I recommended Midnight Mass, but I cannot reiterate that enough. It is my favorite vampire. Ethan asked me after we watched this, or Ethan or Shane, one of you two asked me, is like, have you seen another Dracula movie? And I guess I technically have because I've seen Dracula Untold. I don't want to count that though.
Don't count that.
That doesn't
Yeah.
count, guys.
So apparently Baron Strucker's Dracula is
Baron Strucker's Von Dracula.
Baron von Strucker's Von Dracula, Von
Vampire.
Draculia, which I've seen a fair amount, including Twilight, including New Moon, including Eclipse, including Breaking Dawn Part 1, including Breaking Dawn Part 2. It's a whole thing. Including those. Midnight Mass is like my favorite vampire story ever. I
Same.
think it's brilliant. It's a masterpiece in every way.
Same.
Another fun one that I want to throw out, and this will be a podcast episode at some point. Matt Reeves directed this movie called Let Me In, and it is a vampire movie, but it's a remake of a Swedish or German, I can't remember, I think it's Swedish, movie called Let the Right One In. It's a very faithful adaptation, so I would say watch both of those, and they came out like 3 or 4 years apart. Let Me In is the American remake, obviously, which happens more than you would think. I think those movies rule, and I think they're a really cool case study to watch them back to back or watch them like that. Really cool vampire movies, and they do a lot with like vampire mythology in a very interesting, unique way. I would check out those 3 things. That's what I'm going to throw out.
To set this up, Ethan, don't feel like you have to choose something that's vampire related or related at all to anything that we watched.
I've
today.
recommended comic books while watching Fast and Furious movies. Like,
I have recommended what music did I listen to this week?
yeah.
So what would you recommend this week?
I not only have vampire recommendations, I have Dracula recommendation.
Yes.
I mentioned this before. I love other Dracula movies. I love the 1931 Bela Lugosi Dracula film and the 1958 Christopher Lee Dracula film.
Yeah.
I love those. I would really, if you want to watch Francis Ford Coppola Dracula after listening to this, you should really check out those
Hopefully
two.
you watch the movie
Well, that's
before,
probably true,
because we just
actually,
spoiled
isn't
the
it?
whole thing.
Some of them don't care.
Truly, I know that for a fact.
For a 30-year-old movie, and spoilers for an even older book. Spoilers. Yeah. Any other recommendations? Anything else? Any other comics or anything else?
Comics. Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run. It's a fantastic comic book run.
Like
Came out in the
80s horror, right?
80s horror.
Love it.
They also have vampires in it. So you know
I
what?
didn't know that.
For me, I've got two recommendations. I was kind of kidding about it earlier, but I'm actually just going to recommend it. Tom Waits' Mule Variations, one of the best albums ever. Tom Waits, shout out you the king. I love Tom Waits so much.
Guy's a Tom Waits shill, bro.
I am. I will sign up for that club. Yes, sir. I love Tom Waits. As an actor, I think he's super weird and fun. Like, he just shows up in random shit all the time, and I love it very much. And then I would recommend. Like these movies, Dracula and the movie that I'm going to recommend, feels similar in only one way. In the fact that they are both visually stunning, but the story isn't like quite as interesting to me. Like, look, don't get me wrong. Like, I think Dracula's story is infinitely better than Dick Tracy's, but I think Dick Tracy is a movie that is worth watching because I think the story doesn't work. Who gives a shit? But my God, the visuals of that movie are insane. And it is one of those, like, man, they don't make them like they used to. That is one of those movies for me where it's like, I love that movie, but I also kind of hate it. Like, it's I think it's like, and I don't equate that to Bram Stoker Dracula at all. That being said, it's like they just don't, it feels like a movie made for color. Just like Dracula is. It's like, it feels like a movie made for color, where so many movies nowadays where it's like, did y'all know that y'all could use color in movies? Like, I don't think y'all knew that. And Dick Tracy is one of those movies for me. It's like, I think it is incredibly worth watching, but it is like not a great movie. There's like some really weird choices and the story's like nothing. And the casting's really fun and weird. And just like all of the villains, like, look straight out of the comics, like the old Dick Tracy comics, where they have these weird shaped heads.
Prune face and
yes, they're like, it is such a weird movie. It is such a weird movie, but it is so worth watching. It's like you can't take your eyes off the screen because it's like kind of a train wreck, and it's also kind of amazing. So Dick Tracy is probably going to be my weird recommendation for this week. But I
love that though. That's super
nice.
fun.
Yeah,
That's a great like comparison one though. I think.
Yeah, it's like they're different. Like because I think Bram Stoker's Dracula is like infinitely better on a story front, but they both have such sumptuous, amazing visuals
and like surreal visuals.
Yes.
Too. Like
yes.
They
very.
share like thematics within the decision making in that department.
So yeah, check out Dick Tracy if you've never watched it. It's not great, but damn it, if it isn't cool,
I promise you'll have a time.
good or bad, who's to say?
Yeah.
Check out any or all of these recommendations. Thank you, Ethan.
Yeah, dude, you're
for
the first
joining-
guest on the podcast.
First guest.
Well, thank you for having me. Truly, thank you.
Literally, you made me and Shane sound kind of dumb. You were like pulling out these like, I read the Dracula book, and we're like, I read a book once, I think.
I've read a magazine once.
Well, really, I looked at the picture.
Yeah, it was all pictures. Anyways, thank you so much for coming out, and thank you guys for listening. And so yeah, like I said, like, check out any of these recommendations or don't. I don't know. Live your life.